thank you, ladies, for having me. I really appreciate it. It is quite an honor. So thank you very much, Kai and the team, for inviting me. I hope that I can provide you guys some value with some of the things that we'll discuss today. And I'm really looking forward to getting to a QA and sort of getting some questions answered. And, feel free to throw them at me. What I've done today is I've just prepared like a small keynote to sort of take you through some of the core principles that we follow, some statistics and some items that we've discovered for your demographic. So some things that will probably be helpful to you. And then, we'll follow up once I've gone through the keynote briefly. We can then follow up with some questions, and happy to answer and take you guys through whatever questions you may have. So I'll just share the screen with you guys. Let me just put you on another screen over here. Right. Okay. If you guys want to just let me know if you see that okay. Excellent. So one of the core things that we follow here, and I think you've probably seen it from my little video that I made for you guys earlier for the piece, we follow a principle called the Agile Marketing Principle. And what that's devolved from is a development methodology when developing applications and websites. The key to this philosophy is really about being flexible and being able to move on different demographic shifts and not following a rigid traditional way of marketing. So what we focus on in this principle is, number one, is focusing on the customer value and the business outcomes over activities and outputs. So that's a big separation to just the old hat sell approach. It's really focusing and honing in on your demographic, who the customers are, asking the right questions, and taking that data and input home so you guys can actually divulge that and build your marketing methods from that. The second is delivering value early and often over waiting for perfection. Now, this is probably one thing that everyone suffers with. We suffer with it as well, trying to get your media right, make it perfect, make sure that everything is there. But the key in today's marketing landscape is really about speed. How often can you get those things out? And that is what you should be valuing when you're distributing your or shipping your marketing. The third one is learning through experiments and data over opinions and conventions. So this one's an important one too, because with any marketing material, anything creative, the hardest point is we've all got subjective opinions, but data doesn't lie. That's the objective opinion. So to formulate a solid strategy for your marketing activities, it's important to focus on the data first and then have the discussion and develop the opinions. It's also important which moves us into number 4, to have cross-functional collaboration over silos and hierarchy, which means just get everybody involved and get everybody's opinion based off of that data. It's not always good to have one opinion. Sure, that one opinion directs the business in multitudes of ways, but having the subjective opinions of everybody else will also help you make better decisions in moving the marketing forward. So we don't necessarily believe in the silo approach. It's more of a collaborative approach when it comes to marketing. So responding to change and over following a static plan. This is also another important one. About 5 years ago, we shifted to these principles. So we've been in business for 12 years. In rudimentary, all the education that we faced, it was always a static plan. When you follow a static plan, there's really there's no movement for shifting. So you're always stuck with following the plan. There's KPIs and everything addressed to the plan. However, and it also kind of makes it a little bit boring. You want to be able to shift to a changing demographic and your changing market. Understanding your customers is obviously one of the first ways to do that, but being able to respond to market shifts is also important. So say you need to do that post and you need to get it out for that particular subject. It may be a post, we all do it. We may do a post for something that's happening current we need that ability to pivot. So responding to change over following the static plan is important. So those are the basic agile marketing principles that we follow. And I wanted to get that to you guys ahead in front, just so when we come to the QA, you have an understanding of where we come from and what we how we like to work. So then I can help you answer the questions in that way. So after an audit, I went through and did a little bit of market segmentation, but one of the bigger pieces that came up was your sector. So the 2022 market segment for last quarter, out of the three businesses, so your pest control, other support services, and building cleaning, you guys are one of the larger industries of more businesses starting up. So 4,531, I guess if we divide it by three, we've got an average. They haven't been specific over this, but that's just how many new entrants there are to the market. So this is where I kind of feel understanding your market, but also understanding your competitor landscape comes in play. And that's why I brought it here. So this is from the ABS, but this is where consistency, shipping, testing, and strategy is key. So being able to be consistent with your marketing and with your distribution is important. But also, as we go through the other slides, some of the other things that we've got to go through. The next one I went through, and just to take you guys through the market trends. So search terms for Google, just an overview. What we've found is, what do the last 2 years look like trending for you guys? Some termite treatment. So in Australia, as you can see, over the last 2 years, there's been a general search trend of a little bit of a drop in terms of what the interest has been over time. Now, this has a variation of different applications. Obviously, one, that little gray bar there is the algorithm being updated slightly too, to get more relevant information, which could have also culled a lot of competitors out of the market. But it was interesting to see this particular trend, because it just shows us that, you know, in this sector, we do need to work harder to get people more informative content. So one of the other tools that we used as well to get this data was SEMrush, based off a large amount of keywords. And the key to it is that, like my points that I've got down the bottom, the first keyword, customers want to find an answer to a specific question. So users want to know more information about certain subject matters. So when it comes to content writing and putting pieces out, or writing for your website, blog posts, whichever it be, they want information. Transactionally, they do transaction on some values, but the main thing they're looking for is information, if they are searching through your website. So this is before they've gone through, this is after they've gone through the Google page, and they've seen your listing and everything. If they haven't contacted you from that point and they've gone to your website, they're looking for information. So it's important to get the right information to them. The second is they want to deal with a recognized brand. Okay, so for us, we deal with quite a fair few branding objectives. So we've worked and designed a fair few brands. And one of the key factors is, when people are shopping, they're shopping and looking as well for a reputable, or a brand that is solid. So when it comes to that, you've also got the touch points to consider. So where is your brand located? How many times do people see your business name? What are the colors? All those factors come into play, and tidying up the brand and making sure that it's nice and clean is a good way to communicate this to customers. So that's another a big important one, especially for the termite market. Now, a lot of people were up with questions for Google updates. So there have been some significant updates. I don't know if anyone here has seen increases or the decreases in their traffic. Has anyone seen an impact over the last 2 months? Yeah. So
we've had a bit of
yeah, absolutely. Well, there have been two main features that Google have released, or updates that Google have released, that will be impacting this. So the one of them was the confirmed spam update. This was 100% that they confirmed. They have finished this update and published it. I think it was the end of October. And then an unconfirmed core update. Now, this one is a bit tricky, because no developer has actually released the information from Google as to what they've updated for the core update, which is really tricky for us, because we need to know, so we know what to prepare for. So what I've done is I've just compiled a list of some of the things you need to consider when writing content, building your website, or doing any marketing activities that could negatively impact you, but also what things to think about to positively reaffirm your business. So one of the things is doorways, which is something to avoid. So multiple redirects and funnels to actual pages, multiple websites or similar URLs. So if you've got several URLs and you're directing it into the one place, try not to do that. Google's now, with this update, they're punishing anything that's not relevant to the core business. Multiple redirect URLs. So if you're redirecting from other similar same company websites, again, that's one of the main things, and funnels to pages that aren't relevant. So if you're linking to a page, just a link to a page to get them to the point, that is also punishable. It just depends on how the user experience flows. So there's multiple ways to fix that, but the main one is try not to link too many domains to the same source. That's what Google's looking for. Hidden text and links and horrific backlinks. So a lot of the time in Google, you'll put your website up and then there's a lot of websites out there that will put you in their listing. So they'll pick you up as a service. You might be on, 50 other websites across the globe. They've just picked you up and put you in there. There are ways to check for this, but some of those backlinks can actually negatively impact your business because they may be a website that's sitting somewhere. I don't want to name countries, but it could be India, Africa. All of these kinds of places have those listing websites, and some of the ones that are negative actually come with points that Google focus on, and they negatively bring you down the list just for that backlink. It's something you're not used to seeing because you won't see where that, but if you do look at Google Analytics, you can actually see where these links are coming from and then study and see which ones are relevant. But yeah, avoid hiding text by changing colors. So if you've got text in there and just stuffing keywords into your page, don't do that. It will definitely negatively impact you. The best way to handle content on your website is to use accordions, tooltips, or any other way to still display the content, but you're just shrinking it so they have to do an action to be able to read this information. So it may not be hugely relevant to the first time that they reach your screen, but yeah, delivering it in that way is much more impactful than just hiding content, but hoping that Google sees it, not your user. Keyword stuffing is also another one. This one's been something that Google's been trying to get rid of for a long time, but try not to stuff keywords in there with relevant terms, so termite treatment, so on and so forth. If it's too much, Google will actually read that, the AI will read that, the bots will read that, sorry, and it will negatively impact your rankings. So always make sure that you structure the content that's in the best way to help your user. I think a lot of the time it's a struggle for us to write content, right? So we struggle to, how do we articulate this piece of content? But don't be afraid to be authentic with your content. Don't be afraid to be genuine with your content. Write it as if you're writing it to help this user. You're helping these customers. Google will read that and they will articulate it the same way the user will, and it will benefit your business. Scraped content. So scraping content is the copy and paste rule of going to another website, copying some content, changing some words and hoping that it sticks. Don't do that. Google does not like that. So if you can avoid doing that, sure, use it as reference, but like Picard, what's the saying? Sorry, I might butcher this one. Oh, Sophie's just re-entered. But the greatest artists don't reveal their source, so find your source, but make it authentic, make it true to yourself. If you need reference, just use it as reference. Imagery, don't steal others' works. If you find an image on Google, please don't copy and paste it and then put it on your website. There's so many different things that can go on with punishment in that exercise. Say, for instance, that person that you've copied that image from may have stolen it from somewhere else, and then the punishment just is like accumulating interest. It just goes on. So if you can, the best thing is always to think about the top. You're trying to make this authentic to the user. The people that are actually bringing you business, you need to focus on them. So if you're local to a certain area, make the relevant imagery reflect where you're from, and have fun with it. Go out for a day or for half a day and gather some imagery that you can use in your content. It's always an important fact. An important part of the process is to enjoy it. And then just make sure you update all your things in your Google business page. Now, Google business page is one of those pieces that, a lot of people skim through. They'll type, the address. Oh, we got it affirmed. It's there. But that's it. Business hours not there. Website not in there. So do spend some time to go through the business page and fill out as much of the details as you can. There's a lot of important parts to that page that Google uses ranking factors, and you can also even link your posts or blog posts to the page itself so it sits underneath your Google listing. It is a very important one, and if you can get photos of your business, the only caveat that I have to bring up here is try not to post a photo of a termite, okay? We've noticed over the last bit that any animals or anything, I know it sounds weird, but the AI is flagging animals and those kinds of imagery, so insects included, and it may actually negative impact, and you may get it suspended. So try and just keep it relevant to the business staff, locations and things like that. But yeah, just try not to post the termite if you can. Okay, so that's the update for the Google updates, and we'll run through, if you guys have some more questions on that one, we'll run through that afterwards. So another big question was measuring. How do you measure the success of your marketing initiatives? So there's two things here that I do for what we do as a company for SEO, and myself in particular, is Google Analytics and SEMrush. So Google Analytics is, I don't know if everybody here has access to Google Analytics or has used Google Analytics in the past, but just a breakdown of it is it captures all of your website data and gives you a full breakdown of exactly what users, where the users have come from, what devices they're using, the age bracket if they've got it. It gives you a full breakdown of where they've gone on the page, how they've interacted with the page. So Google Analytics is one of the best tools to use to be able to track what you're doing and what your audience is reacting to. There's things like bounce rate, which is this bounce rate is a term that's used for if someone's come to your website and they've left really quickly, they've just bounced. And so there's a percentage value you get there. So from that, you can determine, okay, well, what do I need to do on my page to actually have them more engaged, right? Which keeps them on your site longer and keeps them clicking through, which then may lead to a conversion at the end of the day. So there's a lot of different pieces there, but primarily what you're looking for is the user flow, how they're tracking through your website. Are they using mobile or desktop? So you may have a desktop website that looks fantastic, but then when it cascades to the mobile and 70% of your customers are on your mobile, they're looking at it going, what the hell is this? So it's important to see what the traffic is like there. Backlinks, again, going back to the backlinks, other websites linking to your website, and then improving the overall user experience to make it informative. So just tracking back to keep your content information and your text relevant to the customer and inform them of things that are relevant to your industry. So help them learn about these things because that's what they're looking for. They genuinely are looking for. And this is from SEMrush. So SEMrush is a tool that is a paid application tool. Google Analytics is free, by the way. SEMrush is paid, but SEMrush basically, it goes through and tracks your keywords. It tracks how your pages are performing, and it gives you an indication of where your pages have been sitting in the rankings and where things change when Google updates. So it's very much a continual change. It changes all the time, month on month. When a Google engineer might have a great idea, suddenly there's another change, impacts traffic across the board. This past October change has been significant. We've been reading a lot of people that have lost, up to 70 to 90% of their traffic. And now if that's your bread and butter, that's a big hit. So it's important. SEMrush gives you all of the clarity to all of those keywords. You can connect it with Google Analytics, so then you can actually make the changes real time. So say if there's keywords in there that have been pushed down or pushed up, you know what to add into your content, so you can change your content to reflect the changes that you see in there. So it's a great tool, definitely recommend it. Webmaster Tools and GTM tag management. So Webmaster Tools just gives you a core, it's the core service or search console is a core service to Google. So it's where you index your sitemap and tell Google what pages you want them to put on their listing. Okay, it's important to check that from time to time because it's the real source of truth. When you've got a new page and you want to get it into the ether really quickly with Google, you want to go to Webmaster Tools and publish it quickly. And if anything breaks, if they're not reading your mobile, if they're not reading your desktop, this is where you'll find that information and it will flag it for you. Most cases, they'll also send you notifications and updates, but it's an important part. And also the GTM tag, which is the piece of code that you need to implement on your website in order for the tracking to take place. So Google will then track, this is where all the cookies and things come from, but Google will generally, off their GTM tag, if you place your analytics in there, they will track how users are interacting with your website and also how your marketing initiatives are going. So the next one is Meta Business Suite and the Facebook Pixel. So to track and measure your success, you need to install your Pixel and have that sitting in your website. Okay, so same as Google track, you put that code in your website and then the bots will basically follow down into your website. They'll track all your information. Meta and Facebook do the same thing, but it's called a pixel, okay? And basically you plaster that into your website and it will do the tracking as well. One of the key things though that most I see a lot of is, sure, you get to a point now where you've got the pixel, you've got everything there, you're tracking the data, but now what do I do with the data? And how do I measure a conversion? You need a measuring stick at the end of the funnel, and the thank you page is it. So whatever you're trying to get them to do to inquire, you need to then throw them to something in order to get that measurement back. You want to say, okay, I want to measure because then you can add a value to it as well. I want to measure the traffic that's coming. I want to measure the conversions that are coming through my website because I need to justify my spend. So the thank you page is where you would plant the endpoint. So through the Pixel and Google, you can configure these to say the thank you page is the final part of the journey, and that's confirmed that someone's filled in the form, they've filled in whatever the platform that you're using or the conversion metric that you're trying to measure. The thank you page then triggers that to say that's being completed, and that's real data, right? So that's a conversion. Obviously you still have to close that conversion on the other side, but ultimately when it comes to marketing, you still want, sales takes over after marketing and they have to work hand in hand. So that thank you page is critically important. So the next one is running through some of the tools. So, we all love the tools, and tools are great, and, subscriptions do increase. But sometimes the tools can be more of a hindrance than anything else. And it's also important to use them. So what tool should I use? So Canva and Hootsuite. Is anyone familiar here with Canva? Have you guys used Canva? Awesome. Awesome. I'm already talking to the converted. Excellent. So Canva, over the years, we've been observing, because obviously we use Adobe and a lot of the other creative suite. But Canva over the last few years has really come to a point where it is a formidable tool for any marketing activity. It links to a lot of things. It's got a lot of options. You can import your brand. So if you've got a solid brand, you can have all your colors, your typography, your iconography. You just load it in there and you're ready to go. The beauty of Canva is it's a short path to get your stuff done quickly. So your organic posts, your ads, any bits and pieces, and even now you can edit video. We just did a video just as a case study for a larger organization for dealing in retail, all on Canva, and the output was just as good as what we would be doing in, Premiere Pro or something along those lines, which you've got a lot more things to fiddle with. So use that as your tool to get content out quicker. If you've got things on your iPhone, if you've got things on a camera and you've got bits and pieces of content everywhere, get it into Canva and start organizing your content there. The next part on top of Canva is how do you distribute these things, right? So if you're going into Facebook manually or Instagram manually, it's a very time-consuming process. And there's tools out there that will enable you to schedule out your content calendar wider. So Hootsuite, Buffer, and Later, they're all a very similar tool. I won't go into the nitty-gritty of them. We use Hootsuite primarily because we're a little bit old school, but Buffer and Later are sort of more modern tools. They allow you to distribute your content on a calendar. Okay, so you can get, for 3 to 4 hours of labor to prepare your content, whether that be listing a blog post, whether that be listing a page, you load them up, and for that time that you've just invested, you've got now a month's worth of distribution happening, and you can go have your tea, enjoy it, start collecting your photos for the next month, right? So it's really it's changed the game fundamentally, and in particular when we're dealing with people that have attention spans less than fish nowadays, you've really got to keep on top of mind, and this is one of the combinations that I definitely recommend. One thing that I've been harping on also for like the last 12 years, and it's probably annoyed quite a fair few people, is a consistent blog. So the hardest part is getting a consistent blog and writing that article. But here's the caveat, is 2 out of 10 of those will be compounding interest to your traffic online, which will grow your business over the years. So although someone may click on an article once they've browsed your website, the one that's ranking for the keywords that you've got in that blog, or that 1,000 words, is going to continue getting you traffic all the time, because these are things that people are searching. So if you can get yourself into a good habit of writing articles, or having someone write articles for you, I always think the best thing is to have the organization write it for itself, because there's nothing better than you guys putting in the content, right? It's personalized to your company, it's branded, and it's coming from the heart of the organization. It's not something that's sort of top level shallow. So yeah, you can use WordPress, Contentful, Netlify, CMS. There's a lot of different content management systems. Obviously, your website, 60% of the internet is WordPress, so I'd assume a lot of them are WordPress. There are a lot of others out there, but as long as you can get that piece together and have it indexed in Google, that's what you're looking for. But off the back of that, you've then got another piece that you can turn into micro content. You can distribute through social media, and if it's a good read, people will read through that and get the information. The other one is email and SMS marketing. Now, for you guys, I think for your market industry, because we deal with quite a few different market segments, email, SMS before and after the funnel, I think, is important. So the sentiment that you leave with your customers after dealing with you guys is just as important as how you've left the location. The same with getting them in through the funnel. So tools like MailChimp, SendGrid, Klaviyo, all of these tools are important to get your list together, harvest your list and get people subscribed to, and then to retain them as customers. So you may have customers that may not come back to you, for a year, for 2, depending on where they are and what termite activity they've got going on. But for those who do have a lot of termite activity in their area, you need to do your best, I guess, to keep your business on top of mind for the customer. And so one of the touch points is email and SMS. It's one of the more old school touch points, but it's still relevant. SMS in particular has high open rates because it's a tool that, when you get your phone or you get an SMS, your first reaction is, oh, I've got to check my phone. So if you're in there, you're definitely going to get a response. But again, it comes down to how you deal with your customers. What is the sentiment that you deal with your customers on? And that will determine how many times you send these emails out. That will determine how, is it a month? Is it every week? And every week might be too much for your customers. But if they're in a high termite covered area, you might want to get to them quicker than the others. So you need to then segment them into their own lists. But those are the tools definitely that I would recommend for that. And then finally, 80% inform and educate your customers, 20% sell. The 80-20 rule, 100%. So yeah, I hope that was informative and answered some of the questions, and I'm open to questions if anyone's got any.
Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yep. Anne-Marie.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie from Ostropest in Sydney. Just right back to your very first about your new startup, 4,500 new startups. Is that around Australian Bureau of Stats?
That's ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I'll prepare this document so you guys have access to the link. But yeah, that was an interesting one that came up through the audit. There's just in that sector, there's 3 sectors divided obviously in that, but yeah, it is quite interesting to see that pest control had come up under there. So with an increase in competitors, that also means that you need to really arm yourself with providing a point of difference between the rest. So I'll share that link with you so you can have a read more into that segment. But definitely it's a vast increase of businesses that are starting up in your sector for sure.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to find out, like we were talking about how long, they are lasting as well. Like, are they
exactly?
Yeah.
Because I think most people know in the industry that you get, your techs going off and starting their own business, and how long does that last? Because are they grasping
100%.
these types of things where you're marketing to the right people, or you're putting effort? Because a lot of them go out and just do the work and then sort of build, through word of mouth or something like that. But then do they, cease working after a while, or when it gets too difficult, or when the tax man comes knocking?
Yeah, 100%.
It'd be really interesting to see the trend in that as to the numbers. Yeah.
And there won't be a competition if our content is full of information, 80% and good value, blah, blah, blah,
Exactly.
So,
I think that's the key. If you can continue providing value over all of the competition, that's the best you can do. And I mean, the customers are reciprocal with it. It's just, as I mentioned, that chat with Kai is the old philosophy of think global, act local. I think that applies across the board. And tangible customers that you can touch in your area is always going to be referral, word of mouth. And if you can provide them value with informative content, and they get the value out of that alongside with your service, obviously your service is highly important. It just bodes for a better experience for everyone.
Are there any hard and fast rules as to when it's too much interaction with the customer? Like, is there anything to suggest? Like, so we have had a few customers who have said, stop emailing me, or like with MailChimp, or because we text afterwards, we inform on the way there, we like check in, ask for reviews, that sort of thing. We only get a few complaining about it, but I just wonder if there's a hard and fast rule of, what's the average that a person expects to be contacted after a service or something like that.
I think what you've said there is pretty accurate. Like, what you've said there is, if there's only a few that are hitting you back and saying, I don't want to be contacted, then you're doing enough. When you get to a point where it's like over the 50 or 70% or 50% mark, and they're getting very upset, then I think you need to go, okay, well, we need to tone it down a bit. But ultimately, there's no real rule of thumb in terms of contact. I mean, Gary Vee, who's owns an American agency, VaynerMedia, he's hard on pushing 150 pieces of content a day. So to do that is an extreme amount of effort, but it's also doable. And it's also a big part of brand recognition as well. One of the biggest things is, the more times you see a brand or a brand name in the matrix of things, the more likely you are to convert. If you only see it once in a magazine, you've only seen it once in a magazine. So if you
get out there as much.
Exactly. Get out there and just and get it. There's a lot of cost-effective ways, but the main thing is, for email marketing, I think email marketing in particular, it's a fickle beast, and a lot of people don't like to, but they've always got the option to unsubscribe. So if they have subscribed to you and you've offended them with your email of giving them a deal, potentially, then as long as it's not over the 20% mark, you're good. Yeah,
with MailChimp, like I used to do that, but I've kind of gone away from that because I felt like it was a bit spammy. I think particularly in pest control, it's quite difficult to market to your customers because it's not very, it's not very sexy. So when putting together these newsletters, I found myself sort of doing a couple of case studies and a couple of, oh yes, this is what we've done here and there. But is there anything in particular, like as the industry in pest control, that we should be focusing on? Do you think that there's any trends that, like should we start talking about, your home, like home tips or?
Exactly. That's where you sit. That's exactly right. I think the main thing is like any business is focusing on what is the key, what is the content hierarchy that I'm going to follow. So when you're planning content for a long period of time, you're looking at like, okay, what are the keywords I'm going to use? What am I going to talk about? There's only so many times I can talk about termites. Wait, I've got 6 other pests that I can do, or wait, I can do a variation of this, or so on. But there's going to come a time where you can't talk about that all the time. So I think it is, it's a combination of things. I think it's getting involved with your local area or the area that you're servicing in the community, and finding out what matters to them. So there's one subject matter. I think the home and improvement perspective is also, that's a great way to be able to communicate to your customers. But again, it's bringing down, it's making sure that it's relevant to your core service or your core industry, right? So you don't want to stray too far away, but anything that can engage the user or be of benefit in information to the user, I think will be helpful. I mean, they'll be pleasantly surprised when that comes into their inbox versus another sale, another sale, another sale, another sale. That's where the 80-20 comes in. Make it informative and the customer will stay loyal. But if you do then hit them with too much sell, they're going to go. So yeah, 100% that content, with surrounding subject matter, you can definitely hone in on, and then it opens up the opportunity to focus on other things that just aren't necessarily termite driven.
And what sort of percentage would you say that you should deliver the content? Like, so, you know, obviously video is a big thing these days. So should it be video, imagery, you know, words? Like, so is there any rules on, you know, should you definitely have a link to a video? Should you, you know,
look, I think that it's a good question. Google loves Google. Okay, so they would love a YouTube video as the title. They would love video content supporting your content. They really do. It does make a benefit in your ranking factors. But ultimately, it comes down to your viability and what you're able to produce in time. I always think start with something that is the easiest path to entry for you, and it's not sort of creating conflict in your brain. You know, if it's going to take some calories to burn in your brain first, but as long as you can get started on it, then you're there, and then whatever else comes from that, you can work on. But I think video is important. But I think what's most important is starting the written piece, because content creates form. Okay, so all creative in Canva, all of the other bits and pieces, you can extrapolate from one particular piece. One way I like to explain it to people is if you write one blog post, 1,000, 1,500 words, in that blog post, you've got separate headings. You've got your main heading, and then you've got your subject matter underneath. You can split that subject matter out into 3-4 different pieces and refer it back to the one blog, which has now got you 4 pieces of content that you can distribute. You can then turn each of those 4 pieces into micro content for videos, which may only be 10 seconds long, and which you can then turn into more pieces of content. So, you know, there's a lot you can do with one piece. It's not about, if you think about it's the old hat rule. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you think about all the tasks that you need to do, it's anxiety and you don't do anything or execute only 20% of it. But if you start on the small pieces and you keep going on the small pieces, the big things come. And the same approach with marketing is, if you focus on the one piece first, especially if you're time poor and you only have like an hour or 2 to get that piece together, make it the best piece, write it like a piece of poetry, and then use that to create micro pieces of content that you can schedule on a longer basis. And then you've got more content continually going out. So yeah, I do agree, but I think it's, don't overwhelm yourself. Do what's comfortable.
And in terms of mediums, I know we've talked about it, but just for the others, you know, like we're seeing all these new avenues to put our content on. Is there any one or like 2 in particular that are particularly worthwhile concentrating on for the pest control industry?
Yeah, 100%. For you guys, I think Meta or Facebook and Google. I think those 2, Google's relevance in terms of location, searchability, keywords. The intent is important when you're thinking about what platforms to use as well. What's the intention of the customer, right? So in most cases, you might have a termite in you know, termites through your house right now. So the first thing is, I've got to call a termite mob ASAP. Where do you go? Google. You may do it on Facebook. Some people actually do search more on Facebook than they do on Google, especially if their livelihood is in there. you can go down the route of Instagram, TikTok, and the rest. And I know a lot of marketers that push a lot of these things, but again, you've got to understand your customer. Will your customer be sitting on TikTok? Will they be sitting on Instagram? And how are you going to inspire them to inquire on Instagram when their intention is to peruse images and videos? Then it's not the intent. So you've got to focus on what the customer's intending on. And now I think most of you guys will experience people calling in because they've got they're being proactive or they're being reactive, and you address it accordingly. I think Facebook has a little bit more of a community sort of approach to it, which means you can harness your market in a different way. You can funnel them into different things, but ultimately those two I think are key for you guys in particular. I don't see TikTok as a medium. I mean, there's a lot of a younger industry, a lot of a younger demographic on TikTok, and those people are also going to slowly come into owning a house and having those termites needing to be solved. So I think there may be some brand recognition that perhaps would be good for TikTok and Instagram, where it's just make sure that you guys are there so they can see you.
So visibility,
yeah. But ultimately, yeah, if you're struck for time and you're looking to post on a multitude of things, I think focus on Facebook and Google, and they'll get you the best yield for the near future for sure.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on guerrilla marketing? Like, when is it too much? Like, pest control can be a bit sensitive, obviously if you've got an issue, your house is, where is it too much? And, or is it down that visibility route?
I think it really is down that visibility route. And I think it's important to ask your customers the questions as well. Don't be afraid to ask the customers questions, because ultimately they're paying a foot bill. You know what I mean? And I think that's an important part. If you don't have that feedback, you're in a closed loop and it's inherent bias. So working with the customer and finding out, how did you find out about us? Where did you go? Did you get a flyer in the mail? That will give you the conversation starter, and then you'll be able to really identify, was it too much? I don't necessarily think there is too much. I think email and SMS is probably something to be careful of, because SMS, if you get a ton of SMSs from somebody, you're going to be like, okay, this is enough now, because it is a personal communication line. Emails too, it's sort of gone down the more personal route, because people are working from 9 to 5. They get emails all the time. So if they're getting bombarded by emails as well as doing work, you got to think that's a negative sentiment to them. But if it is something that's interesting to them, like if it's shopping or retail, sure, they'll accept those ones. So yeah, you do have to be careful with those two in particular. But when it comes to social media, Facebook and Google, go ham, as many pieces as you can do, because the more distribution you have, the more opportunity you have for traffic, and also people sharing those pieces. And I think it's important to be creative with the way that you do pieces. One big part is just don't post for posting's sake. If you're tired and you're like, oh, I've got to get a post out today, and you look at the calendar tomorrow and you're like, oh, it's hot dog day, I'm going to do a hot dog day post. Sure, for some people it might be relevant, but try and keep it relevant. Try and keep it informative and genuine. People will see through that stuff. People will see if you're doing a cat post for a cat post. The internet's full of cats. Just ask AI.
I had a question about the blog post side of things. So
sure,
if you've got an active blog on your own website, and then you're saying also you should do something on Google as well, do you repeat that same content, or are you backlinking to your website, or how do you deal with that?
Okay, so for content on your blog, so you write a blog piece, you've now got a link and a URL that you can link up to a multitude of sources. So say your source of truth is your blog post. You've then got Google over here, you've got Facebook over here, you've got Twitter. Twitter's great too, by the way. Twitter over here, all of the other places that you can now link this post to, all of which have their own followings, right? So you've got people here who may not be on Google, who may not be on these, but ultimately you want to then take that link and paste it as many places as you can, so you do get those backlinks to that. So you've invested time in getting followers on Facebook, so I would post that into Facebook. You've got people ranking on seeing you on Google. So the first time they've typed your business in or typed something along your area, you get the Google page, your business page on the right hand side, right? Underneath that business page is where you can add posts. Now, Google's limited to the way you do it. It's basically like you add a featured image, you add a brief title and description, and then you paste your link. That's how you link them back to it. It's a bit of a manual process. I don't know any tools at the moment. Google once upon a time had the Google profile, or it was like a personal, they were trying to do the social media thing. They closed that down. I think it was called Google Plus. They shut that down a long time ago because it was terrible user interface. But yeah, if you get that on there, it will sit underneath your business in details. So they can scroll through different articles and different pieces. And this is one big thing that I want to reverberate is just when you go and set these profiles up, make sure to go through in detail all of the details that you can add in, because the more variables that you add in, the better the results are going to be. They've construct these forms and these platforms in a way that gives you the most yield. So if you just do the shortest hand to it, you're going to get the shortest hand yield. It's the same thing. I mean, we've set LinkedIn pages up back when LinkedIn started, right? When it was starting to be distributed. And the first thing was rule of thumb, okay, fill out all the form as it is, you know, location, job, so on and so forth. And that over time, the same as blog posts, yields impact. We've still got clients that are getting inquiries every day through LinkedIn just because we've done that. So yeah, it's important to do that. But in terms of, sorry, your blog post, getting back to the point, yeah, distributing them across the board is important. I think just that URL, once you have it, as long as you've got more eyes to it, it's better for you.
And just on that discussion of Google as well, a lot of pest control companies will have multiple Google accounts because of the areas that we service. So to try and maximize on that with the ranking, should we do that? How bad is that for us? Like if they're all verified addresses, do you know what I mean?
Are they separate companies? That's where you have to delineate it. If they're the same company, then it can be tricky. If you're separate businesses and separate organizations using the same brand term, then that is okay. But I think it gets into the nitty gritty with that one. So I'd be happy to share some more details with you on that one. But I do feel that the last spam update may also have some relevancy to that. Going back to, you know, just leveraging the multitude of accounts to harness locations is something that Google's trying to carve back on. So just be wary of it. Have a look at your rankings and have a look if you have been impacted in any way with leads because of this. You'll usually get a monthly report from Google for your business page. So just track in on that and see if you're losing visits and you're losing traffic and losing clicks, then it might be a case of, okay, we may need to look at this in a little bit more detail. So yeah, I think it's definitely.
If they're, sorry, if you have done that previously and now, I don't know, rethinking that strategy, essentially each site also has its own set of Google reviews on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So how would you merge them in, or like, is there a way to do that?
That's the hard part. This is one part that is hard with Google because they don't have a very open support policy. I mean, sending emails to Google can be, even as agencies, sometimes a hard stick. They don't give you a direct contact. Look, in terms of merging, when it's a page and it's got a lot of reviews, it may be just the way that you handle the links. So potentially, do they all go to the same website?
Yeah.
It may be a case of instantiating different links to different locations. So same business, but
it does that automatically. So you can choose to just give the Google review link for one particular location.
Yeah.
So like, let's say I want more reviews on Emerald's location, for example.
Sure.
Then you just hand that link out to everyone for couple of months and then
look, if it's not impacting you negatively, like I said, this is just a recent update. So what I've given you guys, you know, this is also learning for us in terms of what Google has just run literally last month. So I hope that it won't impact that, but it's something that I'm wary of, right? With service bases that are based in location, you've got a lot of options to do. So say if you're just basing it in different locations, that might be okay. But again, I think it's measure your analytics. So see what the data is coming back as. If it's coming back as negative, then, you know, feel free to give me a yell or have a chat and we can do a bit more of an audit into it and as to why. But if it is still boding positive, I don't see there being any impact at this point. They haven't necessarily said business pages in the listings. They've been very vague with some of the information that they've been putting out as press releases for rectification for some of these updates. But they have stipulated that it is a spam. So if they do class it as spam, then that may be something you'll automatically see, where they might suspend an account, or they might, you know, do any sort of suspension or restrict you from reaching certain audiences. So yeah, I think it's just important to keep it updated, keep doing what you're doing. But if you do feel that there's something suspect going on, definitely reach out, and then, you know, we can have a look into it and find a way to mitigate it, you know, because that is one of the things about being agile. You need to be able to, okay, we've got success on this, but now we know we need to be proactive and think about how we're going to plan for the future if something does happen. So yeah.
That's one of the questions I had too, which I guess we'll talk about later on, because we've got Debra and obviously the North side. So that's
yeah, for sure. Well, I think the main thing about Google, and what I really like about it, is once you put your services addresses in there, say for instance, if you are covering a location, Google has an ability to map out the location on their listing. So they will draw a vector image of exactly where you're covering in there. So when the customer is using that and looking at, okay, am I in this service area? They'll be able to see it on the actual Google map of the service area. It's the same for retail, for things like Uber and that kind of stuff. They actually break down the area that they cover, and you can actually see it on Google. So I know that they are pushing that. They're not pushing it as hard as some of the other products that they're pushing, but it is there. So I kind of feel that with that being standing, I don't see it being a problem or an issue at the moment. But it is something definitely I'll take a look into. And, you know, if you do find anything with your analytics, I think that's the most important. If you do find anything with your analytics that's sort of like, okay, we've got to have a look at this, then yeah, reach out. Yeah, red flag. Okay,
well, we'll have to check into that. Does anyone else have any questions for George before we wrap this up? I'm just mindful that you've got business to do, and you've, you know, given us almost an hour, which has been fabulous. So really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. Hopefully it's been of value.
I know that we've talked about it, but you're happy to do follow-ups, you know, in a couple of months' time, and we can do this again if that's, you know, of interest to everyone. I think it's been really good to have questions answered straight away. I've
just got one more little question about, you were saying that Google, you know, is flagging anything with animals now. Is that just the flavour of the month? You know, look, so we go back to just being a people business and all about people, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But look, I mean, you still want to attract with a, you know, termite.
It's a good question. It is a good question. You do want to attract it with a termite, but at the same time, Google's a bit funny like that, because they've got a couple of different ways that they track their data. Obviously, one big one is artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence, not intelligence. Well, that's a big debate unto itself, right? So they're trying to pick up imagery. There's humans that are doing them, and then there's artificial intelligence that is doing it at the same time. So one of the key things for me to answer that question in particular is, I've heard and I've seen some cases that have been impacted by this. So we know just from that experience that this is impacting in some way. So for some reason, it could be just picked up because it looks like something else. Perhaps when the AI is tracking the pixels, it might claim it to be this animal, but it's risky to do it, because if we know that we've seen some of the cases being hit by this, to have a suspension of an account can be a hard thing to undo and takes time, because Google does take time to respond, and there's no direct support line that you can call. Okay, we all have to follow the same support forms, even us as an agency. Obviously, the more frequent we do post things to them, the more acceptant and responsive they will be. But if you haven't sent a support ticket to Google for a while, it's not most likely that you might not receive one back for a while. So I tend to steer cautiously with that, just because of the quick response that Google does have when you do certain things that they don't like. So I would always steer towards people and business irrespective. I think, you know, you should be proud of what you achieved and where you were at in business, and you should, you know, go out that with that light. And I think it's good for people to see who they're dealing with as well. So yeah.
Okay, well, any other questions before we say goodbye to George? I think that's everything, but what we'll do is we'll put the call out for any other questions for the next meetup. I just want to say a massive thank you again for chatting to us today.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you, ladies, for having me.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Excellent.
And any questions, let me know, and I'll follow up with this document as well, so you guys have some back resources on that too.
Brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Okay. See you later,
Thanks, George.
Bye.
See you guys.